we're simply just going to give our predictions for the entirety of the AFC East division. So last year we had the Buffalo Bills. They were the top dog in the AFC East, finishing off at 13-3. Made it all the way to the AFC Championship to face off against the Kansas City Chiefs. In second place, we had the Miami Dolphins. They finished at 10-6. After that, we had the New England Patriots at 7-9, and then the New York Jets rounded out the division last year at 2-14. So obviously, we've seen some major moves throughout the offseason. We've definitely seen the Patriots retool, and they do look like a much more formidable opponent going into this season. They added some offensive pieces, such as Jonnu Smith. They also added Hunter Henry, and they also did bring back Cam Newton, and they drafted Mac Jones out of Alabama. Buffalo, they still reign supreme as far as the top of the AFC. They've got Josh Allen, they've got Stephon Diggs, and they have a stout defense. I imagine they're going to be carrying that into this season as well. Miami, they're going through the second year with Tua leading the helm, so we'll definitely see whether or not that he develops from his rookie campaign last year. And then the New York Jets, they are coming off of a pretty weak season, but they did draft Zach Wilson. They do have a new head coach in Robert Saleh, so definitely could be a potential culture change as far as the Jets go. It's going to set up for a solid AFC East battle going into this season. So, Kev, with all of that laid out, who do you have winning the AFC East this year?
I'm just going to be blunt, brutal, and honest. I definitely have Buffalo. Buffalo didn't really lose a lot this season. Buffalo didn't really have to requip, retool. They, like Kyle said, they had the NFL's leading receiver in both receptions and yards with Stephon Diggs. They had an MVP candidate, at least in my opinion, in Josh Allen, who is consistently improving every year. They have one of the best slot receivers in Cole Beasley. And, like the only thing I would say that Buffalo has to improve upon is their run game. They're one of the least run teams in football in terms of runs, run plays ran per game. And like Kyle said, their defense is very, very, very stout, very consistent. And Buffalo is just one of those teams that are young, up and coming, and they're hungry. Obviously, the AFC East was ran by the New England Patriots for 2 decades, and I think Buffalo's had about enough. And that Bills Mafia has been trending for just a couple of years now with the fans kind of being crazy, and I think that's carried through in terms of energy and positivity throughout the organization. And I think Buffalo has a similar season like they did last year. I don't know if they go 13-3, maybe they go 12-5, maybe they even go 13-14. But 13-4. Sorry, getting used to the whole 17-game season is kind of throwing me off, and I know Kyle can speak in a tone to that too.
Mm-hmm.
But I got Buffalo as the clear favorite. In second place, however, I am going to take a bold statement, and I know Kyle's going to jump at the chance that I said this and probably record me for the rest of my life. But I got the Patriots going about 10-7, maybe even 11-6, depending on how the quarterback situation goes. I have them in second place just because I feel like the addition of those two dynamic tight ends and, of course, the speedsters on the other end of Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar will make a massive, massive improvement to their already decent offensive game. We all know that Cam Newton has the run pass option play, and he can do a lot of things. He obviously can't throw the deep ball as consistent as I'd like or as he used to with his shoulder injury that he's overcoming or overcame, but hasn't improved. I don't know. Cam Newton is just kind of inconsistent. If I'm being quite honest, right before I get into the running back situation, I think Cam Newton loses his job by week 5 or week 6. I think Mac Jones gets inserted because Cam is not going to be consistent enough to lead this already improved Patriots offense into the promised land, only because, like I had just stated, Cam is not consistent, at least in accuracy. Cam cannot throw the ball past 30, 40 yards, and it showed in multitude of times last season. And the running backs, I think they kind of thrive the most with Cam Newton because of the constant interaction of them doing the RPOs and, of course, the running back swings and checkdowns. So we will see what happens. I know Bill Belichick is not a fan of throwing a rookie into a situation like that, but Cam did get pulled a decent amount of times last season, so I would not be surprised if they were to replace him with the rookie because, what is it, Stedham? What's his name?
Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, Jared Stidham obviously was not enough for them. Jared Stidham did not do it, and he wasn't that guy, as the famous man from TikTok would say. You're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy. So, rounding into third place, I got the Miami Dolphins. Their star player on the defensive end, Xavier Howard, did just request a trade from Miami due to contract disputes that he's been having with them for the past 2 seasons. So that does take a very big hit to their defensive presence. He has reported to camp, and he has said that he will continue to report to camp because he doesn't want to get fined. So he is looking for a new suitor. But as Kyle already previously stated, Tua Tagovailoa is in year 2 of his stint with Miami, or his tenure with Miami. Obviously, he was drafted last season, and he was pulled and kind of benched a multitude of times for Ryan Fitzpatrick. So the quarterback carousel was a little bit annoying in Miami. Um, Obviously, he's going to hold the reins solely by himself with Ryan going over to Washington. So I don't necessarily have complete faith in Tua. There were a couple of instances in practice, one in particular where he did throw 5 interceptions in the first practice that Miami held a couple of weeks ago in OTAs. So Tua's really got to show it to me. Tua's got to prove that he won't have a sophomore slump. One of the greatest quarterbacks to come out of Alabama in the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years since Joe Namath. So to me, he's got to hold the higher standard. He's got Mike Gesicki. He's obviously got, oh my goodness,
He's
what
got
the hell is
Devontae
this guy's
Parker.
name? Devontae Parker. I knew it was a D. Ayo, pause. Uh, Devontae Parker definitely is one of the up and coming receivers in this league in terms of consistency. Last year, he had a great year. And I think that Miami's defense can hold, but if Howard leaves, I think it's going to be really, really painful to replace one of the best corners in football. So I'll give Miami probably like a 9-8 record, maybe depending on how it all goes with Tua early on in his confidence. Maybe even 8-9. Obviously, with this season being 17 games, it's not going to be an even 500 record. So Miami will be middle of the pack in terms of record. And then the New York Jets. Zach Wilson, the number 2 overall pick in the draft, just signed his contract this season, and or should I say this morning? Right? Was it this morning? This afternoon?
Yep.
And he has officially reported to camp. So Robert Saleh's in the first year of his coaching staff or coaching tenure in New York. We all know the culture that Adam Gase left behind and the burning souls that were in the walk path of the Jets organization in terms of careers he's potentially ruined in Sam Darnold, Le'Veon Bell, and a litany of other players. So I don't see the Jets doing much. They don't really have enough to surprise me, both on paper and in person. I see the Jets maybe going 3-14, maybe 4-13. Just they don't got it for me. Rookie quarterback, rookie head coach, subpar defense. So not exactly a good formula for success. They'll probably need a couple more drafts to really go out there and make some noise or at least some improvements. Along with free agency that they're going to have to try to acquire some people in the next couple of seasons. But yeah, that's my prediction for the AFC East, which is long and detailed, but nevertheless well needed for the competitiveness that potentially could come out of the division.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty solid division as far as it goes competitively. I will agree with you. I do have Buffalo winning the division. It's just it's just too much offensive firepower to deal with. Josh Allen is coming off of a phenomenal season last year. That connection that he had with Stephon Diggs was absolute money. Stephon Diggs became one of his most reliable targets, and that connection really flourished. And I expect more of the same this year. I imagine Josh Allen is going to hit Cole Beasley a bunch of times as well. He's got solid, reliable target to go to. And like you mentioned, I want to see Buffalo run the ball the more this I want to see them run the ball more this year. Simply because I think they became a little bit one dimensional when they went up against the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. They relied a little bit too much on Josh's arm to get them to the promised land and kind of backfired. And there were multiple times last year where Josh Allen was throwing the ball 35, 40, even 45 times in some games. So I think they're going to have a little bit more of a balanced offensive attack going into this season if they want to get farther than what they did last year. But by and large, they're going to be at the top of the AFC. And I think coming into second place, this is where I think it gets interesting. I'm going to go with the Patriots. I think the Patriots are going to have a bounce back year. They finished 7-9 last year. I expect them to finish kind of similar to what you said, 10-7, maybe 11-6, just because I think the offensive weapons that are going to be either around Cam Newton or Mac Jones depends on who gets the majority of the starts this season. I'm expecting it to be Cam just because he's relatively healthy for the first time within a very long time. And the additions of Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, I think you combine those players with the running attack of Damian Harris, James White, and Sony Michel. That offense is going to be tough to stop, but it really is dependent on the quarterback. if Cam can thrive, that offense is going to do very well. You get Dante Hightower back from last year. He was a COVID opt out. He's the leader of the defense. You have Devin McCourty, who's one of the best safeties in the game. He is also returning. You have J.C. Jackson, who's coming off a phenomenal season last year. He had 8 interceptions. So, by and large, I think New England is going to be a much more formidable team than they were last season. And I definitely expect them to be fighting for a wild card spot this year. And then I got Miami at 3. I think Tua is going to have a decent year. I don't know if he's going to go off. I'm not saying he's going to be, top of the league, but I think he's going to have a decent year. I need to see more consistency from him. And I need to see whether or not that he could take that next step. And I think you might see some flashes from Tua this year, but I think it's going to come along with some bad games. I think, like you mentioned, the fact that he had 5 turnovers in one of the first practices in OTAs just a couple weeks ago. I think you're going to see similar type performances when it comes to Tua this season. So, just the best thing going for Miami, I think at this point, is just consistency on the offensive side of the ball. And Xavier Howard, potentially losing him is going to be a major blow to that defense. Xavier Howard was one of the best corners, if not the best cornerback in the league last year. The guy was just a
10
turnover
pick.
machine. The guy was a turnover machine. So being able to replicate that, whether it's from him, whether he stays on the team, or from somebody else, if he gets traded, I think it's going to be very difficult to reproduce that type of production. So I do think that Miami's defense does take a hit. That's despite the fact that out of all 4 teams, they gave up the least amount of points in the division last year. So I do think that Miami's defense takes a step back, but I still think that they'll be above a 500 record. I think they'll probably be 9-8, possibly 10-7, maybe somewhere around there. But I think best thing going forward is that they just crack above a 500 record, and then I think the Jets round out the bottom end of the division. I just don't have a lot of faith in the Jets. Granted, Saleh is the new head coach, so I hope that there is some sort of culture change. And I just don't think that Zach Wilson is in a position where I think he's going to be able to succeed. Offensively, they did add Corey Davis from the Tennessee Titans this offseason, so at least it will give him somewhat of a target to go to. I think the best thing going forward is that they just run the ball. Run the ball and just hope to God that Zach Wilson is not a turnover machine. Because if he's a turnover machine, I think the Jets are going to be in for a very rough season. Defensively, they are kind of weak. Out of all the 4 teams in the AFC East last year, they gave up the most. They gave up 457 points, which, if you look across the AFC, that's very bad. You got Houston and Jacksonville behind them, and maybe the Raiders. So they are definitely at the bottom end of the barrel as far as defenses go. I think best case scenario with the Jets this year is they maybe finish, I don't know, 5-12, maybe. But I think realistically, I think it's gonna be like 3-14, or maybe 4-13. So I think New York is still gonna have a pretty rough year. It's unfortunate because Salah is a great defensive coordinator. He's being thrust into a head coach position, and he definitely has deserved this role. It's just being in New York of all places. It's definitely a tough assignment. So I think he's definitely gonna have his work cut out for them as the head coach of the Jets. But just to kind of round it off here, Buffalo number 1. I'm going to have New England at number 2, Miami at 3, and then the Jets at number 4.